afternoon, everyone. I'm Esha Datta and I welcome you to yet another remarkable literary session at Taj Bengal. It's an absolute delight for all of us to have gathered here to enjoy an author's afternoon in the city of joy, Kolkata. The foundation is elated to host its flagship event, an author's afternoon, with award-winning author, journalist and columnist Ms. Rituparna Chatterjee, in association with Shree Cements Limited, Taj Bengal and My Kolkata. Ms. Rituparna Chatterjee will be in conversation with conversationalist Ms. Srimoy Kundu. Before the afternoon proceeds further, allow me to say a few lines on the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. The foundation is a Kolkata-based non-profit trust founded by eminent Indian literati, entrepreneur, philanthropist, social activist and feminist, late Dr. Prabha Khaitan. The essence of the foundation is the soulful amalgamation of the multicultural diversities in India. The philosophy of unity in diversity has been inspiring Prabha Khaitan Foundation to create boutique initiatives and activities that showcase the priceless literary and cultural assets of India for the past 4 decades. The foundation aims to encourage and widen the reach and readership of English literature to literary enthusiasts worldwide. Besides promoting literature, the foundation celebrates the dual cultural heritage of India. It is an honor for me to welcome and introduce Ms. Chatterjee and Ms. Kundu. Rituparna Chatterjee is an award-winning and best-selling author, journalist and columnist. She writes California Dreaming, a column for the Times of India, on her life as a global Indian. Rituparna is a former foreign correspondent and columnist for the Economic Times. Her first book, An Ordinary Life, was on the life of the acclaimed actor Nawazuddin Siddiqui. Her second book, The Water Phoenix, which is a magical realism memoir of how she healed from childhood abuse, was in the top 5 best-selling non-fiction of 2020 and #1 on Google India. The Water Phoenix was the 2021 winner of the United Nations Population Fund, UNPFA, National Ladli Media and Advertising Award for Gender Sensitivity for Best Book Non-Fiction. She is now writing a novel. Ms. Srimoy Kundu is an acclaimed journalist and columnist on gender and sexuality. She wrote Faraway Music, her first novel, in 2013, followed by her best-selling work on female erotica, Sita's Curse, which explores female desire through the eyes of a Gujarati housewife. You've Got the Wrong Girl, her third work of fiction, a light-hearted rom-com, broke new ground in Indian ladlit. So without much delay, let's get started. Over to you, Ms. Kundu.
Mainly ladies. I see very few gentlemen. But it's lovely to actually be in conversation with a powerful feminist and a woman writer. 7 books down the line, when I'm usually on the other side of the fence, you only read out 3 of my works. It's lovely to hold space, like I say, for a friend, a sister and a comrade I admire. So first and foremost, Rituparna, bask in this moment. The universe has brought you here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if many of you have already read The Water Phoenix. Like I always say at the beginning of my events, show support to women writers by buying our work. This is a phenomenal book. It's a very moving tale, a very brave story which, I couldn't read it at one go. I actually took it with me on a holiday to Shillong, and there were times when I had to keep it down because it was so powerful, so moving, so true, I'm just going to read out 4 lines from this before I go to my first question. I am not my story. Life as art. The secrets of this world lie in the ethers. I am no exception. What had happened in the ethers had changed everything. The glow I radiated now lit up my life in unimaginable ways. Freedom filled my life. The kinder I was, the kinder the world was. The more I believed in myself, the more the world reflected that. Not so long ago, it was the opposite. I hated myself without knowing it, and the world reflected just that. Now I saw in myself love, acceptance, safety, and celebration. That's what the world reflects. A new life. But how many times had I died before this rebirth? To remember who we are, we have to first forget who we have been. That blank slate is the only way to discovery, to creation. Beautiful lines, one of my favorite parts in the book. You know, this morning I was telling you, Rituparna, I woke up thinking of women and thinking of mythological characters. You know, Sita, Draupadi, Parvati, Ahalya, women characters who we think had a lot of agency. And I was thinking that how come most of the stories of powerful women that we celebrate, that we look up to, that we even fear and revere and worship in this country, most of them come to us through a male lens. Kind male writers who look at the lives of women with some amount of, I think, patronization. And I think this, what you are doing, I have just finished writing my memoir, so I'm deeply inspired by your journey and process. This is really where we take our power back, right? Women writing memoirs, women owning their scars, women owning their bodies, women owning what happened to them and why. So, there's this whole trend now. I just, in fact, finished a beautiful book published by our publisher, Bloomsbury, Gloria Steinem's memoir. I don't know if you've read it. Brilliant, which is on similar lines. I'll tell you about it. Maybe gift you a copy. You'll love it. This book, birthed inside you at a time when life was really within you. Tell us about the start. Because, while this is a book of fiction, through the lens of magic realism, which is your narrative sort of vehicle, but actually it is a deeply personal story. So where did you get the courage from? What keeps us in the dark for so long before we burst out into the light?
Thank you. The first thing is, when we are little, we are taught by the most loving, benevolent people what is the definition of a good girl. It could be sitting in a certain way, doing certain things, and slowly, subconsciously, it adds up to how we present who we are to the world. Therefore, this is not a book I wanted to write. I don't think anyone in their right frame of mind would. And it kind of came bursting through me, and Shrimo, the books choose us. We never choose them. Every book that I have fought hard not to write, including the current novel, it'll like drive you insane, and you truly understand why Virginia Woolf, even the men, T.S. Eliot, George Orwell, why all of them committed suicide, because it's a complete possession. You do not exist. There is only the book. Then you start believing that the book, even if it is your own story, it's not about you. There is a greater purpose for what we are here, and you are just a vehicle for something to come through that will impact others in ways you cannot even imagine. We have all been moved by movies, books. Art exists for that reason. And I think the Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a great testimony to that. And we were still very inspired by, Prabha Khaitan herself. So it's a way of living. And the book, I think, finally came through when I had severe postpartum depression. And it is my belief or my observation that every woman goes through postpartum depression. I'm also not quite sure if it ever ends. 20 years after postpartum or 50, I don't know. But it depends on, do we need the validation of Western medicines that this is a label called postpartum depression or not? That I don't know. I think I'm very selfish that way. I will decide. I won't let a doctor give these. When it comes to psychology, it can be very complicated, especially in America. So I was in severe postpartum depression, and then I realized it was just all of this baggage I had been carrying my whole life. That just, I do not want to give the last part of the book away, but it was so dark that I just had to write it. I finished the first draft in 5.5 weeks. If I had childcare, I would have finished it in 3 weeks. And then, of course, the process of multiple edits, all of that. But so again, that's how it came. It came. The womb is a dark place. All birth is always dark. So I love the darkness. I mean, even when we drink tea and coffee, black, Coca-Cola black, subconsciously a lot of darkness is associated with comfort. So yeah, it came out of a very dark space, and I wasn't sure if I would be alive. And then I knew I had to write it because I have been shamed for it, and I'm still getting letters every day, messages, DMs from people who are suicidal, and after reading this book they're not, and they're just so convinced, how did I know this is their story? Because it's like we all came out of a certain factory, like Parle-G biscuits, just the same. And I think, and that's testimony to Carl Jung, the psychologist, whose work I was heavily influenced by, and this book has some Jungian psychology processes, and the opening quote is one of them as well. And he has this idea of archetypes. I don't know how many of you are familiar, in which basically we're all archetypes. So if you even go by, say, something as banal as your zodiac sign, that's something you share in common with, say, all Taurus or whatever it is, all Sagittarius, so there'll be certain personality traits. So we're all part of these collectives. And that's what happens when we write books and how we connect with readers. And I personally think when it comes to reading and writing, there is nothing more intimate on the planet, because you're really getting so deep into the inner world. So again, it's a dark space. And so, I'm all about, Jung also had shadow work, which is going deep into the shadows, deep into what makes a good girl, what makes a bad boy, and vice versa when you're little, and it's very different culturally. So for example, I have a 10-year-old, and the very alternative environment that he's growing up in, knowing anything by rote, studying too much is considered bad. Completely opposite of Indian education. Not having an opinion is unacceptable. And that includes expression. So even if you are a boy, you could wear tutu skirts and a crown because you still don't know society. It's very attractive, glitter and all these pretty things girls have when you're that little. So to not have that expression is unacceptable. So it's very interesting what is considered very bad here in that part of California, Berkeley, and where the summer of love, the hippie movement, flower child movement, slow food movement, a lot of these organic food movements, everything starts from that little part of America, and there everything that's considered extremely taboo in the rest of the world is considered normal, and everything that's normal there is considered, oh my god, like you would be uncool. So it's so fascinating to me, this good and bad, and that's where Jungian psychology and shadow work comes up, and we slowly own all the parts that we have suppressed. And so again, it's that darkness, and that's where I think just clicking send on the email to my publisher was my biggest act of rebellion, because I knew it would upset a lot of people. But here I've lost count of the amount of people who are not suicidal, so you feel your life is worth it. You've done something. I cannot think of a greater definition of success.
I find it very brave when women own mental health challenges. I won't call them problems.
They never are.
Yeah, they never are. And I think without giving much of the book away, because like I said, I'd expect all of you to leave with a copy of Rituparna's brilliant book in hand. This book also deals, Rituparna, with a part of, I think, Indian family structures, Indian society, which is very conveniently brushed under the carpet. And this is gender agnostic, right?
Yes.
Little boys and little girls are, abused in their childhood. And sometimes it takes years of inner work, be it through spirituality, be it through healing techniques like you've explored in your book, be it through one's own experience of life, right? Which finally enables people, I won't just say women, to shatter the silence. And to also own the story. Like I say that, to say it without regret, to say it with kindness, and to say it most of all with forgiveness, that this happened to me. And I'm here, not because of it, but I'm here because I, in a way, survived it, without the victim mentality. We've talked about this, right? How Rituparna's book was rejected many times overseas.
40 US publishers.
40 US
all the top
publishers.
ones. Yeah.
But I can say you're competing with Rowling, so that's a good thing. She was rejected, I think, some 200 times or whatever, famously. I mean, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but the fans will have the numbers. You had told me a figure which made me really sort of sit up, and I think I understood the book better. What an important piece of work this is after that. You said 1 billion kids a year, more than how many COVID patients passed away
In
in 20. Sorry,
Not just passed away, the total number
the
of
total
COVID
number
patients
of COVID patients. Yeah, so
living and dead.
living and dead.
Yeah,
So that's the number of children who are abused in their childhood. And most of the abuse, because I've interviewed survivors of child abuse, happens within the family. These predators are sometimes even your own parents or your siblings or their close friends, uncles, jatha, jethima, mama, mami, sometimes the trusted driver. And it's very sad, I remember I had interviewed a very well-known designer in Delhi, Rakesh Agarwal, who had told me that, Shri, have you noticed that, young boys ko bahut aasani se park mein log chhod dete hain. Young parents are more scared because we hear more of young girls. And there's this, analogy that if a young boy is abused, eventually he'll turn out to be gay, right? But what we sort of dismiss in that is the mental health challenges. What we dismiss in that is the extreme trauma to the image of one's body, the love of one's body, and how you are never comfortable in your own skin. As you know, I'm not a survivor of child abuse. I had a very sheltered childhood. But I've been abused in my intimate relationship, which is almost the same. Abuse is abuse, and trauma is trauma. And I think what you've done with this book is, I think the reason why so many people are reaching out to you, like you say, people who've bordered on suicide, and I lost my biological father to suicide and schizophrenia, so I'm a survivor, we're a survivor family, and I know the darkness. I've battled depression myself from fibromyalgia, not from postpartum because I don't have children. So I think what I wanted to ask you is, when you write a novel like this, which is so deeply painful, right? How are you able to dissociate from that pain? Tell us a little bit about the healing, because I think so many people in this room may go back battling their own shadows, maybe a predator uncle, maybe a lift man, maybe an intimate partner, their first love, who emotionally abused them. I think something women go through and we don't even recognize the signs as emotional abuse, right? So tell us about, the juxtaposition of pain vis-a-vis healing, which leads to, I think, what I found the book bursting into this kaleidoscope of hope, which came from that forgiveness.
The answer, it will be like a book itself. It's so much material there. I think it's very important to understand what is home. How will you have access to a child? This is a very important question. Anybody and everybody will not have access to a child. It is only somebody who has been trusted to keep that child safe. A woman cannot be abused in an intimate relationship unless she has trusted that person. Any kind of intimacy is the biggest sign of trust. And I'm so grateful we have labels. A lot of us hate labels, but sometimes it's important for diagnosis, like gaslighting, like ghosting. My goodness, how painful. So these kind of things, and they are always about the abuser. And all abuse is emotional abuse. We love to rank everything, cancer is high up there, a panic attack is down there, sexual abuse is right there, domestic violence is right there, emotional abuse and ghosting is so common, that's right there. That is already highly emotionally abusive. This is my problem with family. I personally do not think human beings are capable of anything but emotional abuse. I'm sorry. Even in terms of our relationships, they are so conditional. When we open up to strangers, when we open up, say something like the community you have stated single, those are unconditional relationships, because you're forming extremely authentic bonds based on, here I am, this is my big list of things that would call me a mess, but I think we're all wabi-sabi.
that Japanese art, I think you guys might be familiar with, in which you have broken pieces that are filled together with gold and more beautiful later. So I think once society starts recognizing that, and I do have a lot more faith in the second generation, because this book became a bestseller on Instagram. I'm not even on Instagram, only our publisher is. So I and so many stories came through that. Oh my God! After reading your book, and a lot from the LGBTQ community, abused boys, they said, "Oh my God! Now I know that my first relationship, which was love, was actually rape. How come I'd know this 10 years later after reading your book?" My book has got nothing to do with this. See, this is the power of a book. You will find what you are meant to find, and whether it is a child or whether it is a housewife or whether it is you're in a relationship, or even if it's a man, I don't think it's gender specific. Enough men I know have been abused, and some of them are highly macho alpha males, very toxic. Like, God save us from them. God save themselves from themselves. I feel they are the biggest harm to themselves. And it's very. I don't even know where to begin. The only answer is if we have a more compassionate society, if you really start believing, and that can only come from the family. Stop forcing a kid. Go sit in that uncle's lap. Will you, as a grown-up, let any random person you've met come sit in my lap? I mean, what nonsense is this? Right then and there, you've already ignored the child's boundary. You have, when a kid is telling you their whatever make-believe story or something about, I don't know, I can only think of boy stuff, Pokemon, Beyblades, because it's extremely boring because you've heard it for 1 billionth time just that day itself. But you still have to pay attention, because somewhere, some story that happened 2 days ago, 2 months ago might come up about how he felt hurt by some kid, or something. You really want to be a constant listener. And especially when they become, teenagers, you cannot just shut them down. And these days I don't know, wherever I go, people are on their phones, so that's already emotional abuse. You're already cheating on each other while you're in front of each other. I'm sorry, being very judgmental here, but I see that so much. So if the company is so unbearable, then just go home. Don't be there only.
Actually, we forgot.
It's not like this. It's not like this outside of India.
Yeah.
It's a very Indian thing. Yeah, we've forgotten the art of conversation because we're so scared. Everything is so offensive.
Yeah.
We cannot be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
I think intimacy scares us.
It scares us, and then we are all saying, "Oh, we are alone." And so it's we're just
Catch
hamsters.
22.
Yeah, there you go. So it's very sad, and then we'll end up ghosting because we don't even have the courage. Guess what? I will run the marathon. I will swim with sharks because that's so much easier. I will do the Formula 1 or whatever. And I mean, this whole obsession with fitness and physical goals, and I'm getting over this breakup with abs, but heck, I won't have the courage to grieve and to face that person on whatever side you've been. And I think it's much harder on the men. I've had so many men open up to me. I just don't know what to do with them, frankly, because they do not. The LGBTQ community has a community. Women have community, but the men are so shut down. When they have a breakup, the boys are like, "Get over it. Let's go get drunk. Let's go get." Nowadays, everyone's doing drugs, so it's just so common. The conversation, or let's go get laid. Let's go find it. How many more? It's just even more disgusting. They do not understand that they're abusing themselves. So when I say all human relationships are abuse, it's not in any way subtle. So we need to know who we are, and that's the journey. The book is about self-love, and such a buzzword, and I always say self-love is not buying yourself the latest iPhone. It's sitting with yourself no matter how difficult the emotion. It's not ghosting yourself. Ghosting is abandonment, that's all that it is. It's not abandoning yourself, no matter how difficult it is. Not distracting yourself with your phone or Netflix or whatever it is. So that's pretty much the journey. And once you do that, you start attracting healthier relations. Maybe it won't be your family, but we make our own family.
Yeah. It can be a soul family, like you
Even
mentioned,
healthier.
my community. And
There you go.
Yeah. It's
And
true.
we've had such beautiful
Conversations. Yeah. Also, I think conversation does not have to be a conquest. You don't have to reach a conclusion when you connect with a human being.
Can you ever reach a conclusion?
But people do, we are always meeting we're meeting you for business, or we are meeting you on a date, or we are meeting you, for a kiddie party. It does, you can just, I think, let it freely flow. I felt like this book was talking to me like that. You know, it felt like
It
a
is.
conversation.
It is, and I feel it's like life, you're always unfinished. I don't know when, I don't think a conversation ends. I don't think a relationship with people end, even if they have died, forget if a relationship has ended. But then I also suffer from the Walt Whitman syndrome. I don't know if you know, the poet Walt Whitman was addicted to editing and to rewriting, and so basically a book is never done, at least in my case. I mean, just send it now, and I don't want to look at it again because I will
Let's have
overthink.
this conversation after your 7th or 8th, you know. No, the first.
I have
the
9
first one-
unpublished ones, horrible.
The first
perfectionism.
one, I think, which you send out into the world with much fanfare is like your first child going to school, you know. So it's all that you experience, and it's so beautiful. You never forget the first
Yes, of course.
in anything, right?
Of course.
So, this is a difficult story. It is a profoundly painful, but at the same time, powerfully and magically, you know, a story of healing and hope. And you use the narrative vehicle of magic realism. Honestly speaking, I'm a big fan of magic realism, but I think my own writing veers only on realism. You know, I think I'm quite a, you know, I mean, my stories are not so hopeful. I think they're darker than your stories, and I found this vehicle that you're using of magic realism, because you know everything is very childlike in a way. You know, there's that almost this joy, you know, like this, you know, like even though it's heavy, it's tough in parts, right? Like I said, the portion that I read in Shillong, I was going through an emotional crisis, and I found it difficult to, like, you know, just read at one go, right? And then I came back to Cal and I finished the book, of course, before the event, which I had to. But this inner world, this almost circus-like world of dreams and manifestations and dialogues. Why did you choose magic realism? Why does it fascinate you so much?
It's very interesting. So I write a column on my life for the Times of India. I mean, the description is literally on the vagaries of a global Indian. Vagaries meaning whims and eccentricities, pretty much. And there was this whole thing with Salman Rushdie, and my piece on him was pretty much on how we, back in, you know, as teenagers in junior college in Sophia, we had discovered Rushdie, and everyone was like, oh, we can't understand. This was the world's last sigh. This guy's all over the place. But I think that gave me permission. I was reading Marquez, I was reading a lot of poetry, you know, it's not Rushdie was special, but something about that conversation that he's all over the place gave me permission to understand that, yeah, that means I can also write, because back then I was confident I didn't know how to walk or to breathe. Like, I was that underconfident that I was sure I couldn't even do that right. So I was teaching myself to write, and I think that took a long time. And so when I saw this whole journey of magic realism, it gave me permission, and this is why it's so important to publish truthful books rather than formulaic ones. And there's a lot of pressure from publishing. My God, every now and then I'm published to do this book, that book. It's all the typical ones that, you know, come out every 2 years. But you can be true to yourself, and the magic realism was actually, it still is my state. And the current novel is even more than this, because this is still a child's inner world. This one doesn't have any reality, just dream visions, 100%. And dreams inside dreams is a bit of an inception situation. So I feel that is actually our natural state. I mean, can I do a little exercise here?
Please.
Okay, everybody close your eyes. And close your eyes and 2 deep breaths. I'm going to imagine that I'm going to ask all of you to imagine that there is a lemon, Gondhora lebu, since we are in Kolkata, squirting in your mouth, okay? Can you smell it? Can you taste it? If you can, raise your hand. How many of you can taste the Gondhora lebu? Okay? That's it. It's your inner world. Where is the Gondhora lebu? There is no lemon. That is how powerful your inner world is. There is no reality. When you're in the car, when you're you know, in boring meetings, you're thinking of a lot of random things. It's always your inner world. You know, the physical reality is always secondary. Very often it just happens. You know, you just walk, you just reach places, you just drive. But it's that inner world. What are you thinking? What went wrong? Usually we are conditioned to think negatively. Look at our news, look at the stuff that is fed to us, this tragedy, that. It's always apocalypse, always fascinating to me. How come the world hasn't ended 5 minutes ago or 50 years ago? It's not that bad, frankly. So your inner world is that powerful. And that is why magic realism. But it's a constant battle because publishing will force certain things on you. And they are more accepting when there is a child. In fact, the Mumbai Mirror compared it in a review to God of Small Things, Arundhati Roy's, and I found it very, very strange because it's always Roy and Rushdie and Jhupalari are like the holy trinity of Indian publishing abroad. Those are the only.
Especially if you're a Bong woman, then I think they're constantly tossing you like a tennis match, and sometimes you're writing like Lahiri, sometimes you're writing like Roy.
Yeah,
like as if there's no one else.
As if you can't be yourself.
Yeah,
a break.
Take a break.
And this one has, and I was like, that's about the inner world of kids, Esther and Rahel, the twins, and this is about the inner life of a child. So, I mean, there would be that bit of a similarity, but I think it would be closer to Rushdie because it's so much magic realism. There is a scene where the child discovers her mother's dead body and she's convinced a stretcher is actually a raft because she has read about rafts, Huckleberry Finn and all of that, which is, a raft seems more familiar than what are the odds that a 3 or 4 year old will see a stretcher? Very, very less, right? But has read about a raft. Never seen a picture of a raft. Again, inner world is that powerful. That's why the book is always better than the movie. So it's always inner world. Life is already magic realism, especially in India. It's so surreal. I mean, some crocodile dies and he's a demigod. That whole Ganpati drinking milk. It's insane. I don't know why people bother watching TV. Everything is so funny.
That's true. So we have the last 10 minutes left. I've been forewarned. I think, I must say that, you say your likelihood to Salman Rushdie. I think you're Chatterjee and that's cool enough.
Thank you.
So, because we are in Kolkata and you are home after many, many years, you're also confronting pieces of yourself that you left behind, or that is, I believe, your deepest shadow work. We share a very spiritual, center and alignment. And because this is a Kolkata audience, it's like in the book, the child discovers love, hope, and home. And actually, I personally believe I left Kolkata when I was 20, running away from an abusive relationship. I was beaten in my first relationship. And people find that hard to believe, right? That's another
very
thing.
common.
So when I've spoken at a TED talk or a Josh talk, especially young women come up to me and say that, Shimoy, I can't believe, why did you take it? And I'm like, that's the thing you should never ever ask a woman.
See, emotional abuse.
That
emotional
is abuse.
Kind of.
So, for me, I came back to Kolkata 4 years ago. I've been largely in Delhi. I left at 20, I came back at 41. I'm 44 now, going to be 45. And I think Kolkata, you said sometimes, you've said this to me, that you feel Kali is your daughter. You feel that powerful female energy. I felt a shift in my consciousness, after I've come back. What is home now? Because you've been through your healing journey, right? You've been able to have a book, which explores such a dark part of your life, and it's given light and hope to so many people, right? Like you're saying. What does home mean to you now? And what does Kolkata mean to you now? The important word being now. Chatterjee now.
Now we just need to say nation wants to know.
A nation wants to know.
Well, I think I knew all of these meanings. I'll be very honest, it'll be very difficult for me. I have no association with Bengal whatsoever. I think I've been here like 4 times in my whole life. This is the longest. I wanted to come here. The novel I'm writing right now is on motherhood, but the one after that is based in rural Bengal. I was so looking forward to research, but it's been very difficult for me. I thought I had found myself, and this is what nobody understands about healing. It's like peeling the layers of an onion, or if you're familiar with an artichoke, I would say it's an artichoke, but at the center is the heart. So you think, oh my God, I'm done now, but hey, there's another layer. But you just get into the heart, and it's endless. For me, this whole business of, the roots are, I always wanted to understand what is Bengal. I taught my Sadar in California. I've been away, I've pretty much not been with family. My mother died when I was 4.5. I've just been kind of boarding school on and off. At 22, I went off to America and I've been there ever since. And in California, which is such a beautiful, such an emotionally aware place. You can cancel meetings 10 minutes ago saying I'm feeling sad or anxious. Nobody will ask you for anything. They will just say things, soothing thoughts, take a walk. That's what society needs to be. I cannot even imagine that in an Indian family, you did not come for this mehendi. Oh my God, like you're going to even miss that person. That is already abuse. I don't even want such family, with all due respect. So, and this is what has happened. Not I think anybody who is in touch with themselves will not, entrench themselves, will not lose themselves in that chaos of 200 people. But what I don't know how to answer this, because one part is this whole the Devi energy is so strong, and you're more Durga and I'm more Kali. I think in our
my other hands when I need them.
Well, we see it all the time. You're handling status single, you're fostering a sister, you have so many things.
Status single, I need more than 100 hands.
There you go.
5,000 single women. All of us are, I think, personifications of many goddesses, Rituparna. Not just
of course
Hindu goddesses, but I feel that even witches. I mean,
yes, I'd
rather be a witch than a goddess.
I feel we're all still. I think we're still witches, right? You tell your truth, you're drowned in the stake. How has anything changed ever?
Especially if you're lucky to be in a right-wing government, you have to be very careful.
Yeah. Oh my God.
To say.
I just wrote this article on how nudity has helped breast cancer patients. This was a response to the Ranveer Singh thing. That for celebrities, nudity is expression, but there's women in safe small groups, breast cancer survivors with serious physical ailments in the West. They have these small groups, and nobody's forcing you. It's only if you feel safe enough to go. It's a therapy mechanism. And so that was the story, and they were based on real interviews with people. And actually, a friend of mine at my writers group there, she had severe anorexia, but you couldn't tell because she had this athletic body. That's what no one knows. Anorexia can be addiction to exercise and not just an eating disorder. And so she found burlesque and how that saved her life and made her fall in love with herself. So that's what my story was. And I have all these people saying, wait till RSS catches a wing of this. And why only Bengali women going abroad will find such things? Like the comments are so
because
scary.
we're supposed to be doing black magic.
Yeah,
so I wore black sari and came. I'm just kidding.
There's all this, right?
Yeah, there's all this. I think women, powerful women, scare people.
Yes.
They scare women as well.
They scare
Let's not
everybody.
just put everything on men. I think by doing that, we unnecessarily pressurize men, and it's also a very unhealthy version of feminism, which is totally backdated.
Right.
I think men, as you said, are equally trapped by patriarchy as are women. Women can be gatekeepers of misogyny and
Absolutely.
sexism and absolute downright.
I've had people
patriarchy.
family people shame me.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
the family I'm married into,
Yeah.
as well as yours.
Right. Now that you found your voice, Kali, Durga, sorceress, healer, what can we look forward to next?
I think the next book is even more magic realism, and kind of the tables have turned. This is a child telling the world, you did me wrong. This is a mother telling a child, you did me wrong. So I know this one won't be so well received because, oh my God, we love to see children as innocent. But of course, if we are grown up and we blame someone innocent, that then it's a problem. But this is based on my, and that's where the Kali thing comes in, on my experience of motherhood in America. It's deeply lonely. And I have a very different life in America because the typical, and I do not want to call California America, it's not, it's completely different. There's America and then there's California, which is also quite different from New York. And like I give you examples of, I don't think in any other place on the planet you can say I'm feeling sad or anxious and cancel out. I mean, imagine if this was, and I felt anxious, I could actually call and say, they would say, okay, don't show up, and everybody would understand. I'm just saying, not that it's happening to me, but that's an example. If society was that healthy, imagine if our netas and world leaders were even a quarter that healthy. So anyway, this book is based on how isolating motherhood is in America, how we are beyond Durga. We have to be everything from nanny to chefs to psychiatrists. We also have to look very hot. They all are yoga moms. You can say nobody's pressurizing you. And so there are all of these things. And a lot of them are highly medicated. These are mostly my white American friends. and one of my characters in this novel carries a gun in her diaper bag. I mean, it's supposed to be, it's funny and it's very scary, but it's, the paranoia. So, in the middle of all of that, I say I'm Kali, because Kali is very playful. And she's also Bhadra Kali. We have to split her, right?
Correct.
We cannot accept her in her
Correct.
wholeness that she can be Mahakali and Bhadra Kali. And I feel that, I feel in India I can be more of myself than over there. And the column I wrote about, my column on for Independence Day, 75 years of freedom, was on these women of Kolkata finding freedom, finding community with their mothers-in-law, saving them from domestic violence, kicking out the abusive sons. In this case, the perpetrators of violence happen to be men. I'm not saying that's always the case. Domestic violence goes both ways. So, and there's something I noticed in it, that in this land of Kali worshippers, you can be a woman without labels. I'm not just daughter, daughter-in-law, wife, mother. I can just be. And the fact that you're just called, even the cobbler would say, Ma, kalke ashpe. In that sing-song way, I'm like just about to cry because we're not used to that gentleness. And, that to me is Kolkata. And I love that, and I hope it can happen longer, because I don't know how to deal with family. I never have, and it's very traumatic for me right now. So again, it's going both ways.
It's going both ways, okay. I think, like I always say, that women owning their voices will only create a world of safety. Be it our mothers telling their stories, be it our grandmothers coming forward and sharing the Ondur Mohol life. I think women have an inner world,
Much richer.
And I also feel that we have the apparatus, to reach into our inner world much more than men. I think that's a gift of nature,
So the feminine energy is
the
darker.
feminine energy is darker and more expressive,
Yes.
more free-flowing, more sexual, more sensual, more powerful, right? So I think, Rituparna, we will open up for questions, ma'am. I think this has been a lovely adda. It's a rain-kissed day, and I will open the floor now to questions. Ma'am is raising her arm.
I'll stand up and see. So Rituparna, I'd like to tell that your book is dark, that's what she's been saying. And you were talking about postpartum depression, which is, you said, may last for 30 years, for 50 years. And then you're writing.
Will never end.
Yeah. So I would like to, I've been reading a lot about something very beautiful which I'll share with you. That during pregnancy, the stem cells from the child, you know about it, the womb goes and helps the mother, cures her of all the diseases. And that is why we are so happy when we are pregnant, those 9 months. And we feel, you see the glow and the mindset positive, okay? Then the umbilical cord is cut. So most of the stem cells are gone, but a little bit stays on somehow. And what I've been reading is that it stays on for 20-25 years. So you compare people who have given birth, women who have given birth, and those who have not given birth. Those who have not given birth suffer a lot physically, and those who have given, and our grandmothers, like Mita was sharing, her grandmother-in-law is 94, they have given birth to 3-4 kids. Each time the stem cells stays on, keeps helping them physically. This is a very beautiful thing. I will take your email, share it with you. It's not all dark when we...
No, of course not.
Yeah,
Of course. Giving birth is such a magical thing. It can also be very addictive. And at some point,
So I'll share with you how these stem cells really helps the mother. And the way it's written, that how the stem cells from the child and mother keeps mixing when she's giving birth. So I'll share this article.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so I've really enjoyed the talk so far, and I kind of wanted to ask you about basically the writing process. So, when you write about darker themes in a way, it's really hard to separate yourself from that kind of a cathartic emotion, because when you write about darker things, your own experiences, when you're tapping into that inner world that you were talking about, it stays on, once you're done writing. So how do you separate yourself from your writer persona, when you come back to the real world? So is that something that you consciously have to do, or do you find yourself, settling into who you are right now as soon as you're, up from the table? Because that is something I feel like I really struggle with, when it comes to writing about my own experiences, which are traumatic. So.
Right, thank you. This is an excellent question. Two-word answer, I don't. However, to give you a little more detail, my first book was on the actor Nawazuddin Siddiqui. I was his shadow for 6 months. Like, short of going to the bathroom, I followed him everywhere. Because I was observing, it's like he's a character to me. And he's a very acclaimed actor. And there's something called method acting, which I think everybody knows about. And in San Francisco, I'm from the Bay Area, we have these writers' workshops called method writing, basically become the character. Now it struck me that, a friend runs it, it struck me that, oh my god, that's what has been happening. I just mentioned there's a total possession. And also I don't think, this dark, we don't call the night dark and the day, I don't think either are preferable. We need both. Try living in the Nordic countries, 6 months of sunlight, 6 months of no sunlight, and both have a whole different effect on you. So I don't think we get to choose what we write about. I wish I wouldn't have fought it, otherwise I also, like Srimay, would have had 7 books. I have 9 unpublished manuscripts. It's insane, because part of that is being such a perfectionist, and it's an act of self-hate. And again, this is too dark, this is too, all these self-judgments are the opposite of self-love. So the more self-acceptance, at least at your level, once you've clicked send and send it off to the world, then that's on them, but if you're sensitive, and I'm saying this as somebody who's, still learning, that okay, it's perfect enough now to kind of give it away. So you don't choose what is dark, what isn't. This book is actually also, it's got a lot of humor and a lot of celebration of childhood. It does have sacrifice on the celebration of childhood, on the little friendships, on all the cute innocent stuff, and monkeys, and
how a child sees the world.
I always say this is a child trying to discover what is love and what isn't. That's always my description of it. Again, without avoiding the dark, and this is, we become so sensitive that we avoid this. In the olden days, I think things were not, I always say I'm grandma, so I always say in the olden days, So there is no difference. The characters become, my current novel is driving me crazy. We were just sitting together, Anindita, Srimay and I, a little ago, and Srimay was saying that you relax before you talk. I mean, I'm so into this novel, it's driving me insane. This is all of the one I just mentioned about motherhood. And so it is a possession. But see, here's the thing, when you're reading a book, when you're watching a movie, you're completely mesmerized. If I am not mesmerized that to the level you are multiplied by infinity, how am I going to, how are you going to be drawn into the world? So that's a sacrifice writers make, and that's why we also need a lot of patronage, and there would be no Tansen without Akbar, for God's sake.
Where's our Akbar?
There's Propaganda Foundation. So looking for libraries. Yeah, so because we do tend to get lost, and it's very difficult for people around us. I know I have had to write from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. It's very difficult to be in roles. And now when I have the support, then people are like, how many words did you write now? Oh, you're still editing? And I'm like, so both ways, basically you just need to be left alone. I've been told I live like a ghost locked up in my room, and I found that to be a big compliment. You actually become a ghost. Sometimes I can't even understand where's my body, because I'm so into the character. It's a complete possession. But if you have a spiritual backup, without which, then I understand now why so many actors and highly successful people commit suicide. It is very logical. Unless they have some kind of a spiritual act that has worked for them, it is impossible not to, because it really does take you over. Who was that? Heath Ledger was Joker, in such a dark role. So you have to really understand that once the work is over, then it will slowly leave you out. And then you have to be like fallow land. In agriculture, after harvest, you kind of leave the land alone for a bit so that you're replenished. I'm really trying to do that. I have 3 books tugging at me from everywhere, and I'm like, oh god. Yeah. So just welcome it, let it consume you, but just get it out ASAP. If people around you are not going to let you write at night, just shut the room and write at night. That's kind of my advice to everybody.
Also, I'm going to add one little thing, because you're a young lady and I mentor a lot of young writers. I think the problem with today's generation, I'm sorry, I sound like a dinosaur dadi now, But is that, we've put this word process to everything. Find your own path. You don't have to leave the darkness behind. Sometimes you carry it with you.
Always.
Always. I mean, I think writers and creative people in general are, they are a bit schizophrenic and bipolar because, we have a monkey mind. Our mind is never at peace. Even after you've written a book, there's a storm inside, It's a still kind of storm, but it's not an andhi in Delhi, but it's not a kalbushaki, but it's, you can feel a different shift. So I think, just allow yourself when you're writing. People go to all these fancy, creative writing classes, and I'm always telling students who come that nobody can teach you how to write.
I do not understand.
Yeah, because you write to live, I started writing poetry when I was 4 or 5 years old. The thing is, I started writing because I was so lonely. And why do we write? Because we need a witness to our inner worlds. And we don't write because, you think that, okay, my book is going to become a bestseller, or I'll become the next Chatterjee or Kundu or Ray or whatever it is. You write because you want to tell your story. And that's the power of the pen, right? That if you own your story, if you own your truth, then you see that you're not alone. Today, Rituparna's story has resonated with so many people who don't know her. Like she mentioned, she's not on Instagram, and there's a whole generation out there who are resonating with her. So I would say just surrender to the process. I think today what's happened is, writers too much. Writers are asking, I find that disgusting when, writers go on Facebook and say that, okay, these are the first 25 lines of my book. How do you want my novel to end? Really? Yeah, people do that.
So glad.
Yeah, thank God. I'm not on Insta, I'm on Facebook for a very different reason, really, for my community and my gender work. But I think that's what I'm saying. See, writing is solitude, it's privacy, it's sadness, it's ecstasy,
It's a creative intimacy.
It's intimacy, and it's intimacy. Why is it self-love? Because actually you're embracing all your shadows, your darknesses, your untoldness, your brokenness, and your wholeness. And then you realize that you don't have to be complete. When you write, you realize you don't have to be complete. It's okay. You just surrender. It's like an art. That's why I wish I was an artist, because I think artists are freer than writers.
Yeah, I paint also.
Yeah,
and it's very
I can
addictive.
draw a line.
I have a lot of creative pursuits. Only writing is for the world, because once it's for the world, it's not your own.
Yes.
I paint just to feel free. Sometimes I get so addicted to it. I make a lot of things also. Then I'm like, I don't want to write. So I have the opposite problem of writer's block. I have, like I said, 3 books coming together. And so when you live in flow, I would just say don't ever censor yourself and just.
It's not
just
a
get it out.
process. I think it's a passage.
It's a way of living.
It's a way of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So I have a question that the magical realism, did it ever make you feel like an escape mechanism?
It's definitely a coping mechanism, 100%. Reality is so unbearable that I have to live in my inner world, imagination even today.
So that's a very beautiful way of, putting your way forward. And then how did you ever feel that apart from saying so much and apart from so many people interacting and connecting, a lot of it is yet unsaid?
It's always answered. That's what I was talking about, the Walt Whitman syndrome. See, this is another problem. I'm going to just give another example of my famous 9 unpublished manuscripts. One of the reasons why I cannot put them out into the world is every time I finish, the writer who begins a piece of work, and especially if it's a lengthier piece of work, not just a poem, and the writer who finishes them are two completely different people. It's a deeply spiritual process, a lot of shedding. Even if you're writing about this table, I can write 100,000 words just about this table. That's the level of magic realism I'm at now. So you are never finished. So if you've abandoned that piece of work for some years, you've gone back to it, you cannot rewrite it because you are now completely different. You are not able to relate to it. So it's always unfinished, and it's always a coping mechanism. There's something I wanted to see about back to you, but I'm sorry, it'll come to me. I think, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sometimes we are trying to hide getting in touch with their emotion, and at the same time you want to expose them. So this double.
You have to be, yeah, that's the human experience. And the more, and that's what I said, self-love is not buying yourself the latest iPhone, it's sitting with your emotions. It's not ghosting yourself. It's not abandoning yourself. And actually it's very magical that the more you do it, the more the world does it for you. You know, it really is a mirror. Sometimes I really feel we are in a quantum bubble and it really is, you know, a hallucination.
So today, what is the best thing you love about yourself after the 9 books?
The 9 unpublished books,
I mean,
most of them are poetry.
unpublished or published is not
Thank you so
important.
much. Yeah, thank you. Because I also feel that. So I've also been writing since I was 6.
Yeah, so you don't need to really bring that adjective every time. It's not important.
I feel, I don't, thank you. See, I'm still giving myself permission. I feel the need because young people, a lot of them start with, I want to be a best-selling writer, I want
so
to be this.
scary.
It's very scary.
As long as you've proved it to yourself, I think
It's always
incredible.
only
It's incredible.
about proving to yourself. For me, the prize are really all the DMs and, you know, people not being suicidal. I cannot think of a better use of my life, frankly.
Yeah, I think, see, like for instance, when we were growing up, I'm sure there are many more senior ladies here or men. We loved Enid Blyton, right? I mean, my childhood was all about Enid Blyton.
Margaret.
Yeah. We never knew. Till the longest time, I didn't know if Enid Blyton is a man or a woman. And it didn't matter.
It didn't matter, it does
See,
now.
now what happens is, you know, the publisher will ask you, do you have an Instagram page? How many followers do you have? Can you tweet?
really sad.
Can you get on Facebook and write about your process? See, the thing is, you don't need to, you may meet us when our book is out and ask us a few questions, but you can't, it's not, like, you know, when I wrote my first book, Rituparna, there was a character called P.R. Chaudhary. My protagonist was, and all first books are a bit autobiographical, right? It's a very popular thing which happens, especially women. So, you know, everybody started coming to me and saying that, you know, is this your story? Did you actually fall in love with your editor? I'm like, no, most of them were rapists. I mean, me too, right?
Oh my
As a
god,
journalist.
has anybody worked in the toxic media? Oh my god. It's like, you know, you're avoiding one bullet after another. Where do you duck?
So I'm saying that, you know, sometimes when you look at a writer or an artist, it is just beautiful to soak in their creation. You know, I was in Amsterdam 2 weeks ago at the Van Gogh Museum. And imagine, I mean, he painted 200 paintings sitting in a mental asylum just after he had cut off his ear. And
Actually, it's
months
very
before.
therapeutic to be in a mental asylum. One
Yeah.
trip to Delhi and I'm longing for one.
No, that's
I want to just
okay.
be cut off and be able to
So,
write.
like I'm saying, you know, the need now to dissect every little thing of every someone. I think somewhere, you know, it tampers with, like, you see a movie coming out, you know everything about that movie. There are promotions, there's this, there's that, there's hoardings, there's Instagram reels, you know. Sometimes I feel we're really diluting the purity of art because you're attaching this material consumerist thing. Like you're saying young people, I mean, I've had young people come to me at Lit Fest and say that, Shri, how do we become a best-selling writer
Yeah, it's
like
very
you? My
ridiculous.
first question to them is, have you read Shimoy's work? No, we haven't. Then how do you know about me? I follow you on Facebook. Yeah, Harday, yaar. You know, you know, I like a fool published so many books and I mean, thank you for adding one more follower to 50,000, but I'm just saying, you know, so that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you should just let art breathe.
Not sometimes, every single
Yeah, every
time. That's
time.
why it
Yeah,
exists.
yeah, that's why it exists. I think you had a question.
I'm so sorry. I've been waiting. I'll come to that before I forget. One another part, and I think it's part of what am I most proud of now, is letting go. Before coming, this is a very, I think it's a very historical trip for me, and for me all history is only personal. I really don't care about politics. It's a waste of life, one thing after another. So I've been journaling, I don't know, for my 15 years of journaling, which was like a whole suitcase full of handwritten journals. I write by longhand first. I burned them, each and every one of them. I read them, and everybody said, how could you do that? And that is, I will, you know, totally take it and say that is real courage, because I have burnt like an entire life, and there's a lot of work out there, and I'm not afraid to delete. If I've written 100,000 words at this level, when I know it's good enough, you know, I think it's pretty good. Even then, I'm happy to let it go. I think that level of faith in oneself is what I'm very proud of. And this whole, thank you. It didn't come easy. It didn't come easy.
Incredible, yes.
Thank you.
And the other part is, I think, I love myself very, very radically, extreme. It doesn't matter to me anymore if anybody hates me on my faces, and it's just been that journey. Things have been so tough. But now when I'm dealing with family for the first time, because I've grown up on my own, I actually do not know how to deal with, especially in an Indian context. And to constantly know this is a new lesson for me, because you do so much psychology, you start seeing everybody's point of view, you even start feeling sorry for all the grade A abuse. If somebody throws acid on you, you start feeling sorry for them. Your empathy goes so high because your self-love is so high. The less you need from someone, the greater of service you are. And these are very subtle lines. So I'm kind of coming to that oh, this is about you, it's not about me. Maybe I don't need to work on myself. Maybe it's about you. It gets very subtle. So I think I'm learning that, and in Kolkata somehow learning these very, very subtle and energetic boundaries. And I'm sure it will come in my work 3 years later. So I'm trying not to lose myself, to be true to that same integrity, because the courage to, for example, burn an entire lifetime of work and to live that way is constant death, it's constant rebirth. So to be that, on an hourly basis in situations to hold on to integrity, I think
But
that's
this whole thing was letting go gracefully. It was not a critical.
It's a very private process. I read each one of them and I
But
said
it
thank
was
you.
not like critical towards your work. You weren't
No,
like very.
not anymore. Now it's an act of love. I hugged each one of them and said thank you for your service, and then I burned each and every one of them. It's like a cremation. So I did all of that in my backyard, careful enough not to set off the fire alarms. People my neighbors asked me if I was barbecuing. I said yes.
Really? Thank you
It was
so
like
much.
Thank you.
believing in yourself so much that you can set fire to something that you created, believing you can do it again.
No, I don't. I love myself so much that even if I don't create it again, the whole problem with the human race is of identity. When we say my work is better than yours, my kid is better than yours, or my whatever, anything is better, or I am worse. Everything's about identity. So I think I just want to be free of identity and labels and rules, and this becomes a way of living with every breath, every second. So it's just an act of faith in yourself.
This can't be described in words. It's so much more than what you're saying.
Yes,
actually.
yes.
So much more than what you're saying.
Absolutely.
I can feel that, we just can't put labels to this. It's
Yes,
so much more.
yes.
And maybe after 10 years from now, you'll discover more things than why you did it then.
Yeah, but it goes very fast now. What would have happened in 10 years is happening in 6 months now. So it's a bit like Vipassana, it's very deeply transformative. It's a very spiritual
So
process.
when you talk about spirituality, just very short, I'm sorry.
There's a lot of it here.
Yeah, so is there any specific thing which is your go-to?
There's a lot of psychology in it. I still hold by Vipassana because it's an atheist practice. But now it's more about observing whatever happens. So I go into an observer state and you really start, I really feel life is a dream, because, and then there's this, it's a mix of things, in Advaita Vedanta, there's a practice called Neti, I'm not this, I'm not that. And then you start saying, I am that person who 5 minutes ago was sitting there. I am the same person who was, and this happens with deep meditation, because you're in an observer self, who at 5 years old, something happened. But I am not that experience, and yet here I am. So I am that, I'm not, who, what. It's something that cannot be described in words, but the book has a little bit of this.
Thank you so much.
Is it making sense?
Of course, a lot of it. Thank you. I can relate.
Sure. Finally to your question. Thank you for being so patient.
No worries. So I haven't read your book, apologies, but I haven't read your book yet. But they say that all trauma sits in the body.
Oh yeah.
And so you touched upon a lot of traumatic incidents, and you talked about abuse and suicide and postpartum depression. So have you connected a lot of this to somatic processes and
You should
somatic
read the book.
healing? Yes,
It's got a lot of it. It's all about the body. I always say that this is a book that from the first sentence to the last sentence is about a child discovering what is love and what isn't. And second, the character is actually not human; they're all feelings. Mm-hmm. So it's all about the body. It's actually completely, and there are lines like, I left my body to become the wall. Could such a body be trusted? Or the walls turn maroon with my anxiety from my throat. So you're becoming the environment. That's why it's magical realism, because it gets very surreal and it's heavily psychosomatic. And the current book is 100% that. I mean, it's mothers, it's bodies, it's and yes, the body completely holds trauma. For me, I still say this is the seat of my anxiety, and it's interesting because it's the throat chakra. Forgetting the name, Vishuddha. Vishuddhi. Yeah. So it's the seat of expression, and that's kind of what the my whole life is. Your life is, our lives are, especially.
It's a very interesting question. I'm just going to add. I hope I'm not interjecting.
No,
Please, you complete this.
so yeah, the body is a huge part because. And that's why when people ask me for anything writing related, I said it takes over your body, the characters take over your body. For me, my body shape changes. It's quite spooky. It's a complete possession. It's a complete haunting. Why trauma? I mean, I'd written a column ages ago when this column was with the Economic Times, House of the Times of India, in which it was depression is like the weather, it comes and goes. And so, your body very much, once you get into any kind of meditation, you become deeply aware. And every tiny pain screams out to you. And even my kid, when he gets, when he would listen to me, which is no longer the case, he would have 104 fever, and we would let it, with no medication, he'd be fine in 5 to 6 hours. Because we're sitting with it and we're listening. There's some pent up anger. Or, toddlers have a lot, so it doesn't have to be some big labeled abuse, but toddlers have a lot of stomach issues. Stomach is, what is it? Manipura chakra. What is the solar plexus chakra? Anybody? It is swastika, yeah. So it's got it's a seat of identity, and toddlers don't know what is that. And then there's fire in there. There's hydrochloric acid. So that's your stomach pain and colic, and so yeah, we're going to the doctor. The baby has tummy ache. Oh, it's so common in babies. No, there's a psychosomatic cause to it. So it's not. It doesn't have to be human birth. I always say it's trauma. And then so everything is traumatic. I mean, modern living is traumatic. We're totally against nature. Being against nature is traumatic. So everything is PTSD, with how much. So everything, time your body will scream out. You have to listen to it. In Kolkata, everybody seems to be addicted to medication. It's somebody who doesn't live here who comes and sees the amount of hoarding, advertising, hospitals just blows my mind. And somebody asks you,
hospitals and Hajome That's very important for
addiction to
Gelusil and
people can't understand. I don't take any medicines.
Antacids.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, you have to have this, and then you have to at least have a pudina that's natural. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Maybe I can listen to my body, which is telling me. So I don't eat much rice. So people make fun of me, or they'll like force me to eat. How can you be Bengali? And I'm like, I'm not. Because I'm born into a culture. I decide what of it comes and goes. So there's all these. If my body is telling me, because I'm so tuned in, what will work for me and what won't, and you're going to shut down your body, eat that, then have a Gelusil or Diagene or Pudina or your choice from the buffet of medication available. You're not listening to your body, you're asking it to shut up. Then don't tell me tomorrow you have cancer 20 years down the lane because you've not listened to your body. So I have very little sympathy for, I know I'm going to sound like a total bitch, and in this case I am. Because I used to work, there's a lot of it. I have worked with cancer patients, I've volunteered at hospice, I've helped people pass over, and it's all about the body. So if you listen, you can actually heal yourself of the greatest ailments, including breast cancer.
Any other questions? I think we've had a great, very riveting session. Thank you to the Prabha Khaitan Foundation for supporting writers. I think you're absolutely right. Art needs patronage, and patronage which means appreciation, which means love, which means rejoicing in the work of an artist, which is not always about numbers and bestsellers and how many likes you have and how many followers you have.
It was never about
it
that.
was never about that. Like
It was
as
about
I said,
one connection.
when I went to the Van Gogh Museum, and I took the audio tour, right? You just plug in and then you go through the museum. It's astounding that today Amsterdam as a city practically lives off Van Gogh. I mean, you have them everywhere on plastic bags and cloth bags and little curios and pencils, which are like the sunflower. But when he lived, nobody even understood his impressionist art. He was painting because he was consumed by it. That was the only way in which he knew how to survive, how to feel sane, how to find his life raft. So for some of us,
writing.
yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. So I think all of us need a life raft. Sometimes we find it in our relationships, sometimes we find it in our art, sometimes we find it even in our professions, in our jobs. Sometimes we find it in the children we birth or foster. I'm not a mother, but I foster. We have, I have a 13-year-old foster sister. I think it's this whole journey of life, where you find your life raft and you let go of your life raft, and you swim and you sink and you come up for air again. I think that's what Rituparna's book, Chatterjee's book, it made me feel that this is really life. There's no end. It's a process. It's a passage, and you learn, you unlearn, you go through your darknesses, you do your shadow work, and you come to your pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You come to your version of the truth. It does not have to make sense for the world. It does not have to make sense for anyone else. I think women, I lead a community of women. Of course, it's a single women's community, but we've all been single at some time in our life, right? And I think women are lonelier than men. We are lonelier because we always want to understand ourselves. Rituparna's book helped me understand her, the writer, the characters, but also understand myself. And you're very right, ma'am, that trauma sits in the body. I suffer from an autoimmune disorder called fibromyalgia. And it's a pain, it's a nerve pain. It's not as severe as lupus or Crohn's, but it doesn't cause you to die, but it causes you to be fatigued and in pain all the time. And it took me years of self-awareness and self-work and spiritual work to understand that my fibromyalgia is because of the abuse that I went through in my relationships in my 20s, being thrown out of a car, being beaten, all of that, a childhood which was traumatic because of my dad's untimely death, because of suicide. So, all of us, I think, we carry a lot of stories within us, Rituparna has used the lens of magic realism so beautifully. We're all finding our vocabulary. We're all finding an expression to bring to light our inner world. So I would say more power to women finally owning up that their inner world is just as powerful, and it deserves to be heard, it deserves to be seen, it deserves to have a voice. More power to young women wanting to write their stories, more power to women readers reading and supporting women's literature, more power to patrons like Prabha Khaitan, which are helmed by a woman who brings in women talent. More power to women, really. I believe it's time to take our power back, and it is a woman's world, because it all begins from the darkness of that womb, right? As ma'am so beautifully explained this, the stem cells, right? Light born into that darkness, life born into that darkness. So thank you very much for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you very much for listening patiently to our our adda, our chat over jhalmuri and cha and samosas, and do pick up the book. I'm sorry I'm saying it so many times. I do the same thing at my own launch. Thank God I'm doing it for someone else now. But support women's writing. Support women's writing. It's very, very important. Women struggle much more than men in the publishing world, in the world of cinema and art. And we can only thrive if we are backed by our readers, right?
We also suffer extra assaults.
Yeah, we suffer extra assaults. We have to, for instance, I was once told, my last book launch somewhere, I was told that, your books must be selling a lot. And I said, okay, nice, why do you say that? I'm just curious. You're so glamorous. And I said, only a man can say something like this. So on that note, pick up all of them, So. But anyway, thank you for being a lovely audience. Rituparna, may you go on to tell all the stories that you're born to tell. And thank you for your sisterhood, thank you for your friendship, thank you for the light that your book shed on my life. It's been a lovely experience, wishing you all the very best.
On behalf of Taj Bengal and the Prabhakantan Foundation, thank you for a lovely session. I would like to invite Ms. Sabrova to come and give a moment to the both ladies.